Today I'm making something I've been craving for a while, stuffed crust pizza. But instead of ordering takeout, I'm giving it a homemade, healthier twist by using my sourdough pizza dough. This is my first time ever trying something like this, so come along with me as we try this together. Friday night has become pizza night in our house, and I'm taken to making sourdough pizza crust just because it makes my tummy happier. I feel like I can digest it a lot easier compared to greasy takeout from your local pizza place or a yeasted dough. But just because it's homemade, it doesn't mean it can't be fun and exciting, and I've been seeing commercials for stuffed crust pizza lately and wanted to give it a try, but with a from scratch healthier twist. I'm using my favorite tried and true sourdough pizza crust recipe that I've used many times before. I've added my own personal twist by adjusting a few ingredients and also how you knead this dough. Instead of putting it in my mixer to knead it there, I do a set of stretch and folds like you would if you were making just an artisan loaf of bread. I find that this develops the gluten way faster than leaving it in my mixer for what seems like 30 minutes or more, and then even after that it doesn't really pass the window pane test. This way I just have it sitting out on my counter and I can come to it every 45-ish minutes, do a set of stretch and folds, and by the third set it's usually good to go and ready for its bulk fermentation rise. The more you watch me make sourdough, the more you'll see I definitely don't do it a conventional way. I actually pulled my starter out that same day. It was still cold and I used it in this dough, and it was still ready by dinner time. I think a lot of people see sourdough as something that takes 3 days and is not something that's going to fit easily into their daily life. But once you figure out what shortcuts you can make, it really does not seem like that much extra work, and it brings a lot of health benefits and also flavor to your meal. Here you can see I'm doing the last set of stretch and folds. The bread's nice and elastic. It doesn't break too much as I'm pulling it up, and so I know that means it's ready to go to sit out on the counter for as long as I can leave it. I think this day I left it out maybe about 6 hours from the time of the last stretch and fold to the time that I had it out on the counter to start shaping it. I just set it by my warm oven while I was baking something else during the day, and that is a great way to speed up a rise if you're in a little bit of a hurry. Now later this same day, even though I am in different clothes, but that's only because I have a little baby, so we go through a few outfits a day. I could see that my dough had doubled in size, so I knew that it was ready for me to pull out and shape. I just set out some flour on the counter to keep it from sticking too much and pulled it out of the bowl. This recipe makes 2 pizza crusts, so you can take one and cook it and freeze the other, or if you're like me, I just make both and then we have pizza leftovers for the weekend. Something I learned while I was making this dough that I haven't tried before was letting the dough rest for a few minutes in between steps. I have had trouble with my pizza crust breaking and having thin spots and thick spots while I'm trying to shape it, but this time I didn't struggle with that as much, so that's definitely something I will continue to do as I'm making more pizzas. So I'm just shaping each loaf by just kind of kneading it down a little bit, rolling it up into a ball, and then pulling it against the counter to kind of bring those edges underneath. And then I'm going to let each dough sit for about 5 minutes before I begin stretching it. I really don't have a good method of stretching it out, but sometimes I like to take a little olive oil and put that on the dough and then begin pressing it down to get kind of the beginning of the circle shape, and then I can start pulling and tugging on it like you see me doing here. With making the stuffed crust pizza, it's important to make the dough a little bit bigger than you want to, because you're going to take the edge of the dough and fold it over this mozzarella stick, so you will definitely be making a bit of a smaller pizza once that crust has been folded over. Another tip I like to use when making pizzas is to put down some cornmeal underneath the dough. When you're baking it, it helps prevent sticking. And then as I'm folding over this pizza, I think it was actually easier than I expected it to be. The key here is just to make sure you're really sealing that dough down, because you don't want the mozzarella cheese to kind of start seeping out the sides. It definitely burst out for me in one spot. I think I had a little bit of like a weak part of the dough, but otherwise it did pretty well. So once you just kind of are adding your sticks and you wrap the dough around, then you can go back through and really press down on the dough to make sure you've got a really good seal. And while I'm stuffing the crust and putting on the toppings, I'm letting the oven preheat to 475 degrees. Putting this in a nice hot oven is definitely key to getting a crispy, chewy crust that everybody wants on their pizza. Here you can see me talking to my son as he's watching me make this pizza, but I'm spreading on some pizza sauce. You can definitely make your own, but I really like the Simple Truth brand. They have some that's just tomatoes, salt, and olive oil. I just try to look for a pizza sauce that avoids all those extra sugars and refined oils. Then for this pizza, I decided just to keep it simple since we're really going to let that stuffed crust shine. So I did shredded mozzarella, and I also did some banana peppers on top that I had in the fridge. And as I was making this, I was thinking about how I really like Domino's garlic butter on their crust. So I just melted some grass-fed salted butter and then mixed in a little bit of garlic powder to taste and brushed that on the crust. This also helped give it more of a, let it crisp up in the oven just a little bit more. And I can definitely say that was a good move and was very delicious. I let this bake for probably about 20 to 30 minutes. I kept a close eye on it, but really when I'm baking my pizzas, I'm looking for that cheese to get bubbly and brown and the crust to get kind of like a golden color. Once I pulled it out of the oven, I was really excited to give it a taste. That cheese in that crust is definitely melted and it was so good. It really tasted like something you would get from a restaurant. Making this has inspired me to think of more ideas on what else I could make healthier versions of at home. So let me know in the comments what you would like to see next. I hope you have a great day and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.